Hi! Welcome to the 14th episode of A Little Passionate. I'm your host, Brittany, and today's episode is extra special because I talked to my friend Nicole all about mental health. In fact, before I even started recording episodes for this podcast, she was on my list of people to interview. She's full of joy. I think you're going to really like this one. And I'm very excited about it because it's just such an important topic. So I hope that you feel encouraged and full of hope after hearing it. Let's get started. Hi. Well, I am so excited to have my friend Nicole on the podcast.
Hey.
Welcome, Nicole.
Thank you so much.
Well, this is going to be an amazing episode. We're going to be talking about all things mental health. Before we get started, I do have to say that I've known Nicole for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
We go way back, church camp days, man.
Yeah,
it's funny when Facebook memories pop up and you see over the years the things that we'd write to each other on Facebook.
Oh, my goodness. Ashamed.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, what were we thinking? What were we doing? So this is really awesome to have you on here and to reconnect. And I'm excited about what we're going to be talking about today. But before we jump into all things mental health, this is one thing that I ask every single person that comes on my podcast. So it might throw you off just a tiny bit. Okay. But what is one thing that you are loving right now?
Ooh, okay. This is good. Okay, the first thing that comes to my mind, I've got an adventurous, rambunctious 4-year-old. And so we're doing all the sports.
Yay!
We are finishing soccer and we have started basketball. So he has his first game on Saturday.
Awesome.
And then we're just kind of rolling into really whatever he's wanting to try and do. I'm all like, let's do it. So that is what I'm loving. I played sports growing up too. And so I love just all that goes into it, practicing and the games and the excitement and because confidence boosting.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that would be it. I love that.
That's so fun. I love that answer. Well, I hope he has an awesome time at his game and that he wins. And if not, it's still okay.
It's okay. Yeah, he's competitive. So
I am too. I understand. That's awesome. Well, if we'll go ahead and get started just by having you just tell us a little bit about yourself and just what this journey has looked like for you to becoming a mental health therapist.
Okay. Well, yeah, like you said, I'm Nicole Eckerd, and I am born and raised Jonesboro, Arkansas. So, good old Arkansas. I'm a licensed professional counselor, and then I just recently became a supervisor of therapists. So there's a process that you've got to go through, and so I help clients or help therapists go through that. So, and then I specialize in trauma. I use a variety of techniques and interventions with clients, and I've been doing that for about 8 years. I cannot believe that. I know. And then for the past 3 years, I have become the owner of Resilience Therapy here in Jonesboro. So that is my other baby. Love it. So excited about coming to work every day, which is an incredible feeling. And so I really, really love what I do. And my journey of being a mental health therapist has been very humbling, invigorating, right? Lots of different emotions. And it's actually one of my favorite stories that I like to tell, because I think that sometimes people have a misconception when they see business owners or mental health therapists. I think they just think, we woke up one day and wanted to help people, and it's just been smooth sailing. Like, it's been an amazing process. And it didn't start out that way for me. And so when I started college, I actually wanted to be a pediatrician. A lot of it was just to have the doctoral title. Like, I could be called a doctor and make a lot of money. I think that's what a lot of people focus on when they're in school. But thankfully, my biology professor at that time gave us the 4-year degree plan. And when I saw that, I was like, I do not want to study biology and zoology. Like, these things are not interesting. I don't, we're talking about being passionate about things. Like, I don't have a passion for these things. I'm not drawn to this. And so I was actually taking general psychology, and that was something that I noticed I'm really good at this. It comes naturally. I enjoy it. It's sparking my interest. And so I quickly switched my major to psychology with the goal of being a marriage and family therapist. So
Okay.
still therapy, but definitely a different avenue. And I didn't know really all the different options that went into counseling. Again, I just was like, marriage and family therapist is popular. That's what I want to do. And so went through a lots of interviewing different therapists and social workers to kind of figure out a little bit more of what I wanted to do. And so that's when I discovered, oh, counseling. I can be a mental health counselor and kind of hit all those different marriage and family and anxiety, depression issues.
Hmm.
And so I enrolled at UCA. I was there for 2 years, and that was a wild experience. And I say that because my first semester, I had so much anxiety.
Mm.
I'd never experienced it before. I've always excelled, in school, did pretty well. I had to work hard, but it came naturally. And so this was the one point in my life that I was like, I don't know what's happening. I'm getting really nervous doing presentations. I would actually layer my clothing because I would be sweating so
Mm.
much. And so I remember calling my dad even and saying, I need to change schools. Like, I need to go to a smaller school. This is not what I want to do. Just so much stress and anxiety that I had. And I started to put into practice what I was learning. And so I started doing some meditation and moving my body and working on my breathing and praying. And so I noticed
Hmm.
and journaling, lots of different things like that. And so I noticed over time that my anxiety started to go away and my confidence started to build. And sometimes I forget about that, but I love that as a reminder. And
Yeah,
sometimes I
that's
disclose that
beautiful.
to clients too. Yeah. Um, and so fast forward through working in community mental health, and I again just felt like the Lord was telling me, you need to serve people in your community. When I was working at Families Inc., I was in Walnut Ridge, and so I couldn't really. People would, talk to me about counseling their kid or themselves, and I couldn't make the time for it because I was there, and so I felt like God was just telling me, you can do this, do something on the side. I didn't want to do that because I didn't know what it was going to be like. And I like to have a plan and be in
Hmm.
control of things. Uh huh. Yep. And so, but I did. I stepped out on faith, bold, bold faith. And I started it on the side and then it just grew and grew. And I remember having to make a decision to leave this community mental health job that, provided my clients, got my insurance stuff taken care of, like all the things I wasn't going to have to worry about. But I did. I finally made that decision to leave and do this full time, and I'm so excited. I don't regret that decision ever. So it's just been a wild ride, but just so enjoyable too.
That is such an incredible journey, and I'm so glad that you shared that because I think all of us, especially, we get into this idea of this is who I'm going to be. This is what I'm
Right.
going to do. And for me,
Mm-hmm.
I'm a planner too. I'm a type A person. I love a good
Yep.
plan. I love to be in control. And then when
Yep.
God tells us to go a different direction, I'm like, are you sure
Yeah.
about that?
No, it's not gonna work. Yep.
No. So I really love that. And I think it's just so beautiful, like just seeing how faithful he was through your obedience
Oh
and
yeah.
to where you're at now. And I know we'll get to that later, but I've also loved how you brought that into your church.
Yeah.
And I think that
Mhm.
that's been really cool to see because a lot of times that's a topic that we've seen over the years that like now churches are starting to talk about mental health,
Right.
but
Yeah.
for so long it was just something that would be stuffed under a rug, or just
Mhm.
they wouldn't always handle it right. And so I think it's just really awesome that that's something that you've been able to share about lately. That's been something that's really encouraged me that I've been seeing on your social media and things like that. But
Yeah. I agree. I'm very proud of churches now who are having mental health therapists come and speak or do a small class over it or just mention it. Just talk
mhm.
about it in conversation. I've struggled from depression or I'm working through people pleasing. It really, really makes me excited when I get to hear those things because then I know that people are, one, finding the root of a lot of their issues, and
Yeah.
then two, feeling comfortable to talk through those things and heal.
Yeah, I think that transparency is something that is so needed and so beautiful in the church. And like,
Hmm.
I just think it's such a powerful thing because, too, like, we're human,
Right.
from the pastor, down to,
Yeah.
just the people who attend church. We're all people and we're all
Hmm.
human and we all struggle. And yeah, like, I've really, it's meant a lot to me to see that coming from you and your church. And that's something that I've been very vocal about with my
Good.
church and the things that I
Good.
have struggled with dealing with anxiety as
Hmm.
well. And so I'm just very excited about this. I'm excited to continue to delve
Yay.
into this topic. So I was going to ask you,
Uh-huh.
as we're talking about passion, you can clearly tell, like, as you're sharing about your journey and your love for what you do. But what are you passionate about? I know it can be like multiple things. Like, I'm a
Yeah.
person who's passionate about a lot of things, but what are some of those things for you?
Yeah, man. Yeah, there definitely are several. I would say just number one, just a Christian. Like I'm
Mm-hmm.
passionate about being a Christian. I believe that Christ died on the cross and rose again 3 days later, and I know that that's what fuels my passion when it comes to mental health because it helps me understand. God gave us life. We're not here by accident.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I'm living this life that God gave me, I want to live a full life. I want it to be a life that I enjoy, and then a life where I can have purpose. And in that purpose, it involves a lot of times helping people, serving people, pouring into people. And so that's how all of that's
Yeah.
connected whenever I'm doing what I'm doing. I realize that it's so much more than, me listening to someone talk about what they're going through. It's the reason why I'm here. It truly is. And then I'm passionate about being a mom. I love my little boy Malik, and that's important because there
Hmm.
are times where kids, man, they can drive you crazy. And so just having that reminder that this is my purpose, I
Hmm.
love this kid. I want him to be the best human being in the world. I really think that I know that helps me in times where I'm
Yeah.
like, little boy, calm down. Stop talking to me that way, just having that reminder. And then I'm also passionate about being a wife, and that's a whole nother
Yes.
um talk and thing in itself of just understanding what a wife is and partnership and the joy that my husband brings to me and the ways that I can help him and the union that we model for Malik. And so yeah, those are pretty that's pretty much my passions.
I love it.
Very short and sweet.
No, that's great. So, one question that I have is, what is something that may surprise people about your profession? I know that everybody
Mm,
has like these ideas of,
yeah.
what you may do, but what is something that may surprise people about
Yeah.
what you do?
Um, I think people think a lot of times that therapists are superhumans, that we're just, the question a lot of times is just, how do you do what you do? And I think they just think that we're like these energizer bunnies and just these robots. And so I always make sure people know that we're human, not
Mm-hmm.
superhumans. And so we struggle and we have issues and we see our own therapist. That's always, I would probably
That's
say,
good.
whenever I've, self disclosed in sessions and felt like it's helpful for clients. A lot of times they're shocked. They're like, wait, what? You see a therapist? Yes, I have seen a therapist. And then I think too, just the style of therapy. Sometimes
Yeah.
people think that we're just there to listen and shake our heads, and
Take
say,
notes.
we take notes and say, how do you feel all the time? And I like to laugh with my clients. Sometimes I cry with them. If they're needing a hug and, they ask for that, I hug them. That doesn't happen a lot just because people are a little awkward about that. But there
Hmm.
are times where, people are just like, I just really need a hug. Um, and that can be very therapeutic to allow them to feel what it is that they're feeling. So, and then we provide tools. So that's another thing that sometimes people don't want to come to therapy because they're like, it's not going to be helpful. They're just going to sit there and listen to me. But, you know, at least with me, my self therapy, I'm going to provide you with practical tools to help you with current, past, future issues that come up. So I think those are really important just to remember that it's more than just sitting in a chair listening and nodding.
Yeah, no, that's good because I definitely think we have our own idea or what maybe even what's been represented in media or,
Hmm.
the things that we see or that we hear from other people without fully understanding the scope. And really, like, no one's going to know what it is like until they go to therapy themselves.
Right. Yep. Yes. That's if I ever get that question of, well, what do you do? What it's like? I give them a little bit of a snippet of it, but then I'm like, you need to try it for yourself because every therapist is different. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And that brings me to the question like, for someone who is trying to find a therapist,
mhm,
what is something that they should look for? And how do they find somebody that they believe is like a good fit for them?
right. Yeah. People don't believe that it's okay to interview your therapist. That's okay. I heard someone say it, date your therapist, but that, we definitely don't want that. But
Yeah.
that kind of mindset of trying different therapists and seeing what works and what doesn't. And it's okay to be picky too. I think that's another thing is sometimes people are like, well, I just have to go with whoever is available or has an opening. And it's like, no, you can choose your therapist by their gender, by age, by race, location. Do they do telehealth? Do they do, just in person sessions?
Hmm.
What's their style like? So some therapists are more of that, we would call that person centered, just a lot of nodding, taking notes, validating. And then some are a little bit more direct. And so I've got a little mixture of both. I'll listen, but I don't mind saying, hey, I noticed last week you told me this was going on, and this week you're telling me this is going on. Are we avoiding something? What's going on there? So there's those different styles, and then also what your therapist specializes in. So it's okay to choose a therapist that only works with trauma or only works with kids. Um, you don't really know unless you start to ask those questions or try them out. I've had clients before come to a session and just say, hey, I'm trying to figure out a therapist that's a good fit for me. And some have come and they've stayed and liked it. And then some have said, no, I think I'm going to try someone else. And it doesn't offend us. So
Okay.
we're cool with that.
Yeah. What are some good questions that someone could ask if they are trying to like interview a therapist?
Yeah. So I think number one is if that therapist has a consultation call. A lot of therapists do a free consultation call. I do one of those, and that does allow for all of those questions. What's your style? Do you do office or telehealth? What do you
Hmm.
specialize in? It also, if the client's wanting someone that's younger or of a specific race, they can, offer that information, and the therapist will be able to provide some feedback of, oh well, I that's not me. I usually work with clients that are in this age range, but I know somebody who can help you. And so I think just whatever you're wanting to know, those specific areas, ask those. Um, Obviously, like how much it costs and things like that. But
Hmm.
if you're really wanting to know just, am I going to connect with this therapist? I think what their style is, they specialize in some of those other categories we talked about.
Have you found that most like insurances cover therapy?
Yeah,
And I don't know
yes.
if people realize that. That's why I'm asking
No,
because that might be a good
no.
question.
Yes, no. And that was something even I was shocked about. I didn't really, before I got into private practice, I didn't really understand how all of that worked. And so a lot of insurance companies will cover it 100%.
Wow.
Yeah, so completely free. And their rule is just that it's medically necessary. So that you're not just in there
Hmm.
talking, hanging out. But yeah, or some of them will cover 80 or 70%. So you may have like a $30 copay, a $40 copay, and that's affordable. We spend that like in a week on Starbucks or Shadrach. So
Exactly.
very affordable. And then other insurance companies will have an employment assistance program. And so they'll actually offer a set number of free sessions. Um, and that's also good to take advantage of if you're not 100% sure if you want to do therapy or what it's like. 3 sessions, you can kind of get an idea of that therapist, if you're going to connect or work together. And then after you use those, then you may have to start using your copay, or if insurance covers 100%, then you have that too.
That's really good to know. I think that
Yeah.
that's going to be very helpful because I don't think a lot of people realize that that's something that their insurance may be covering already,
Yeah.
and it's not anything special that you have to tack on, it's
Right.
just already part of it. So I think that that's really good to know.
Yeah.
Because I feel like too, therapy is more accessible now than it probably ever has been. Would you
Yeah.
agree with that?
Absolutely. It was really amazing whenever um, insurance started covering telehealth, and that was because of COVID, unfortunately. But that was a no-no in the mental health world. There
Whoa.
were just so many rules of, well, we don't know if it's really that client, and it was just so untraditional from what therapy has been, which is the therapist and the client sitting in front of each other. So when COVID hit, it forced things to change. And yeah, people have been able to be in their homes, or, be in their work offices on their lunch breaks getting therapy. And so there are probably, I probably do about maybe half
Okay.
telehealth, half in person. But yeah, there's a lot more people that are seeking out therapy just because it's telehealth. I've heard them say that. So
Yeah, and has that helped you with clients who may not live in the area since you
mhm.
do have telehealth available?
Yeah, yeah. One of those things too with finding a therapist that fits you was location. And so we
Mhm.
get licensed in different states. And so if you're
That's
really wanting somebody that you know of, a friend has in Florida, but you're in Arkansas, if they're not licensed in that state, they can't see you. But if you think about Arkansas, there's lots of different towns and places that are
mhm.
smaller that maybe don't have access. And so they could, set up a telehealth session with me and still get therapy.
That's really cool. I love that that's helped just broaden, like, your scope of who you're able to see. It also helps people to be able maybe they'll feel more comfortable, being in
Mhm.
their home,
Yeah.
or just in a place where they feel safe
Mhm.
because it is like telehealth, and I think that that's really cool. That's
Yeah.
awesome. So, I was wanting to ask you as well as we dive into, like, more along just mental health in general,
Mhm.
what is just one thing, like if there's one thing that you would want people to know about mental health, what would that
Mhm.
be?
Okay. I don't know if I can do just
You're good.
but I
if
but
you
I
It's
can
okay, you don't have to.
definitely try to minimize it. The big one is just understanding what it is. I hear that so much, that people don't understand what mental health is. They don't know if they have mental health issues. I feel fine, but our mental health is the way we feel, it's the way we think, it's the way we act. So all of us is our mental health. And so if I'm not thinking right, it's going to affect how I feel, it's going to affect how I act. And there are times where, we're anxious and we're not thinking right, and we feel depressed. And so we stay in bed all day. And so I think when people really understand, oh, that my mental health is negatively impacted by the stressor, that's why I'm doing these things. That's why I think they will seek out therapy, or just um, some healthier ways to work and manage those issues. But that's the big one. I think also just knowing that it's okay to not be okay.
Mhm.
Life is really difficult and challenging. And so if you are struggling in your mental health, that's okay. that's where being in tune and understanding what it is and maybe even the whys can really help. And then lastly, I love Brene Brown. She's amazing. And so she has a quote that says, learning to love and be kind to yourself is a lifelong journey. So sometimes we understand it. We understand it's okay that we're not okay, but then we're still bogged down or sad because it's not getting better. And it's a
Yeah.
process. We may feel really better and develop great coping skills, and then something else may happen or that same thing may keep coming back. And so it's something we work on, every day, or if you're seeing a therapist, weekly, bi-weekly, just whenever you need it. It's like going to the doctor. Whenever something's wrong, you go to the doctor. Same thing with a therapist.
That's good. I like that you went into just explaining what mental health covers because
Yeah.
again, like we have like these just preconceived ideas, I guess, of it only being just anxiety issues or
Yeah.
depression issues, but it's so much more than that. And it
Right.
covers so many things. And so I'm glad that you shared that. And so as we continue to discuss like in depth more about mental health, what would you say are just some best practices or tips that you could give us for just helping our mental health?
Yeah. Yes. I always encourage exercise, and I get it. If you're listening, you're probably like, no. Um, I used to be one of those people too that's like, I don't need to exercise, like it's not really a big deal, but there's so many benefits to moving your body. It reduces stress and improves your anxiety. So exercise, getting outside, doing some kind of activity for even just 30 minutes will make a major, major positive impact on your mental health. Um, and then sleep. We are not good at sleeping.
No,
Um, we have horrible sleeping patterns, and we're trying to survive on like 5 or 6 hours. And so the image that I love to create is like a battery. If your battery is at 100%, you're going to do pretty good lasting through the day. But if you're only getting 3 to 4 hours of sleep, you're starting your day at like 50%. And you've got
mm-hmm.
to go all
That's
day
good.
long and people and take care of kids and be attentive to your loved ones. It's not going to happen. And then we wonder why, and I'm probably going to step on some toes, why we're dependent on coffee and sleep aid, because our body's not doing what it's created to do, which is to sleep. We need sleep.
Mhm. And if you're exercising, then it actually helps improve your ability to sleep.
It
So they
does.
go hand in
Yes.
hand.
That's right. Yes. Yeah. And then I would say also just journaling too. Sometimes people have just a lot going on and don't get maybe quiet time or time to think and feel. And so journaling, prayer, meditation, those things just really help us be more in the present and not focus on what I didn't do and what I need to do, and really just process what it is that's going on and kind of get more in tune with our feelings. And then when we read over it, if we
Mm-hmm.
choose to do that, we can organize our thoughts a lot better. Um, so I love those. Self care, always do something fun for you. That's one of my, usually on Fridays, my clients, I'm always like, what are you doing this weekend? Like, go outside, do something fun, because that makes a really big difference as well.
Yeah, those are all really good tips because, and I like how even you mentioned like with you as a therapist, you give a lot of really good like tools
Hmm.
because I feel like, there are some therapists that are out there and that I've experienced that they were great at listening, but I
Yeah,
didn't necessarily get the skills that I needed to be able to deal with anxiety.
right.
What are just some tangible tools? And I think that this has really helped a lot because these are just things that we can just simply add into our routine. And it
Right.
really will help a lot.
Hmm.
Exercising does make a huge impact. Just if you could walk for 30 minutes,
Yeah.
even just start there, simply there, like it really does make an impact. And then it improves your sleep, but it all just kind of works off of the other. I think that that's
Right.
really cool. Yeah,
Yeah. And
that's
a lot of
great tips.
people will complain about kids, but get them involved too.
That's
We
good.
we do that if Malik's having just a moment, I'm like, if it's pretty outside, I'm like, let's go outside. Like let's change your
Mm-hmm.
environment. Let's get your body moving. Your breathing's getting regulated, and usually it takes like 5 minutes and he's fine. So yeah, these things can be applied to not just us, but also our kids.
Yeah, and I think too, like that goes down to just like with ourselves, like we're so consumed with screens and
Hmm.
just inundated with information, and
Yeah.
we wear so many hats in life,
Hmm.
and even that can sometimes trickle down to our children,
Yeah,
or to those around
absolutely.
us. And so yeah, I think that that's really good. Like if you're experiencing that, then what are they experiencing?
Right.
And so that's
Hmm.
good to bring them all together, and as a family, like, let's all go outside for a minute.
Yeah, yeah, let's
Let's
all take a breather.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's good. Well, hey, we all need to do that sometimes, it's
Uh-huh.
that's
Yes.
healthy, that's a good thing, it's not a bad thing. I think sometimes we look at like walking away from a situation as like a bad thing
Oh
sometimes,
yeah.
but I think it's
Mhm.
such a good reset, because I
Yeah.
would rather not act out in anger or frustration. If I could just walk away, take a breath,
Yes.
reset my mind, maybe
Right.
say a prayer,
That's
God
right,
help
girl.
me.
Mhm.
Then I
Mhm.
know that I can go back to the situation and I can face it. But
Yeah.
sometimes that's looked at as like a negative thing, but I actually think that that is a very like positive thing to
Yes.
do.
Yeah, one of my another one of my sayings that I say is when our emotions are high, our logic is low. So
Mm,
our ability to
that's good.
rationalize things, it truly is not there the way that our brain works. We are going to be driven by our emotions. We're not going to think when we say things. And so having that moment to step away, say a prayer, sing a song, whatever it is that we need to
Mm-hmm.
do, it really does, relax us and calm us, and then when we go back into that situation or conversation, we can think a little bit more clear. We're a little bit more logical and less emotional. So emotions high, logic low. It's always a good one to remember.
Yeah, that's good. I like that a lot. That definitely comes into play, especially like in marriage
Oh
relationships,
yeah, girl.
when you're in the midst
Mhm.
of conflict.
Woo. And you just, yeah, you're not thinking at all. You're just
No.
feeling.
Yes, exactly. I am 100% a feeler, so
Yeah, me
that's
too.
good to know. That's
Yep.
good to know.
Mhm.
And as I just think about just like unpacking all the things in our life, like I know so many of us wear a lot of hats. Um,
Mm.
and I know that for me, like I'm in ministry and it can be very stressful.
Yeah.
There are times whenever I know that I deal with a lot of like burnout, and I feel that
Ooh.
like creatively, just not even like I get to the point sometimes where it's just hard to even go to church
Yeah.
because it's just a lot. Like there's just a
Mhm.
heaviness, and I feel like there are times in life where it doesn't matter what our profession is, but there's times when we simply get to a point like where it's hard to just continue to show up and be
Yeah.
on. And
Mhm.
so I guess my question is, what are some tips that you may have for us to help us get out of that place of burnout or to
Yeah.
avoid burnout?
Yes. Yeah. I'm always going to hit on awareness. I think first of all, being aware of what's happening in your body, what's happening in your mind. And so if every time usually we get burnout with work. So every time you're going into work, your heart is starting to beat really fast. You're starting to feel very irritable or just negative. When you leave work, if you're just so depleted, unmotivated, those are some good signs that, okay, burnout is happening. I'm not able to sleep because we're thinking about work. All of those different things are signs of burnout. And so you can manage that if you're starting to feel that, some of those things that we talked about before, going to exercise, doing some journaling, working on your sleep, trying to get to sleep a little bit earlier, those things can help. And now let's say you have been in burnout and experiencing it for a while and you just are like, what's happening? I've been here for months. I still think that those things can be helpful, but also you may want to have conversations with people that you work with or some bosses so that you can kind of reorganize things and evaluate maybe what you need more of or less of. You may have to take some days off. I know nobody likes to do that, but that may be some things that we have to do as well. So If you're starting to feel yourself get burnt out, you can maybe take things into your own hands. But if you're kind of past that point where you're like, I've been here for a while, then you may need to manage that more directly with coworkers or bosses. I think you can still do the other things too, but it may take a little bit more work to manage.
That's good. And that kind of plays into my next question, which is, being able to identify things in our life that trigger
Yeah.
us.
Mm. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, we know that word triggered,
Mm-hmm.
but nobody really understands what it means or they know it feels. I'm having an emotion, which is exactly what triggers are. It's an emotional response that we're having to a person or an experience or an object. And so when we feel that emotional response, and sometimes it can be unexpected, like, what just happened? I had a client talking about that this morning. Like, I don't even know, just something happened. That's something that's triggering us. And a lot of times we feel it and we react to it, or we try to suppress it and avoid it, but we don't really figure out what is that about? What's going on there? Why did that person saying that make me feel angry out of nowhere? And so there are numerous of questions that you can ask yourself. But some of the ones that I'm always encouraging clients to do is just, well, what were you feeling? Name that emotion. When we can name it, we can tame it. So what am I feeling right now? Where do I feel that in my body? Is it in my stomach? Because sometimes we'll say, oh, I got stomach aches. No, it's anxiety. Um, but is that in my stomach? Is it my head? Is it my chest? What is happening in my body? And then following that again, thoughts. What thoughts am I having? What is happening with this experience that's making me fear my life or making me think that these people are talking about me? And so, behavior patterns, what behavior patterns am I having if we're getting triggered, but we kind of dismiss it, but then we get triggered again and we dismiss it, there's something there that we need to tune into. So that one you see a lot with people every time they go around a certain person or around the holidays, they start to have these triggers, but really focusing in on what is happening, what's the experience, what's happening within me.
That's good. I think too, like when we're able, like you said, when you can name it, you can tame it. That's what you said,
Hmm.
right? That's
Yeah,
good.
that's right.
It's
Yeah.
so true. Like if we
Hmm.
can put a name to the issues that we're dealing with, then we can take like control over it. Like
That's right.
we can be in
Hmm.
control
Yep.
and we can overcome these things. But if we continue to stuff it down, suppress it, avoid it, then
Hmm.
we can't. It's just going to
Right.
consume us. So I think that these have been great tips just
Good.
to
Yay.
understand, yeah, like why we're feeling the things that we're feeling, and that it's okay to not be okay, but we've got to address it. We've got to talk about these things, and that
Hmm.
goes back to kind of our conversation that we had earlier, but about our faith,
Yeah.
and just how our faith plays a role in addressing our mental health needs. Can you speak to that for a
Hmm.
little while?
Yeah. Well, I think again, breaking that stigma, that mental health is important to God. And the verse that I love is, Matthew 22:36, where he's talking about love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind. That's everything we just were talking
Mm-hmm.
about. The way we feel, the way we think, the way we act. And so there's an emphasis on the body as a whole. There's this interconnection between those three things. And so if God's talking about it, but it's important. It needs to be important to us. And so we've got to tune in and focus on these different areas of our mental health. We're really good at using like popular biblical words about like condemnation and temptation, but all those things are is, temptation can be triggers. If I'm having an emotional response, I'm
That's good.
likely going to um, yield to whatever it is that I'm wanting to do or think or say. And that's being tempted. And, the Bible is very clear about that. Um, I think of things too like anger issues. That's mental health. We're not supposed to have a hardened heart. We're not supposed to walk around in unforgiveness. And so, if I'm just going off on people and I'm reacting to people and doing it in an unhealthy, ungodly way, that is maybe some mental health issues we might need to work on. Why am I reacting and getting angry at people? Another one is shame.
Mm.
Shame is condemnation. I'm feeling so ashamed by something I did. I'm so embarrassed. And, the Bible again is very clear in that in Jesus Christ, we don't have condemnation. We don't have to live in shame. And shame is one of those that's we're not really always aware of. It kind of creeps up on us, but it's the root to a lot of ways of how we act, a lot of different things that we do, the people that we interact with. Shame is usually attached to that. That comes up a lot in sessions. And then one of my favorite ones that Christians are so good at is people pleasing. We are some people pleasers.
Guilty.
And, we will deny and sacrifice what we need because someone else's needs or wants are more important. And we are supposed to serve others. But I don't think that God wants us to do it that way. Back to that verse, love your neighbor as yourself. That's not loving us. And that interferes with um, sometimes the things that God wants us to do. If God, like for example, me, if God is saying, hey, Nicole, you need to go and start this practice, I want to bless the people that you're going to be in contact with. And I'm like, but God, my supervisor, which he is amazing. And all of my clients, these kids I've connected with for the past 5 years, I can't do that. I'm being disobedient because I'm pleasing others, I'm idolizing them. So these things are connected. We just sometimes refuse to see it or just don't understand either. But yeah, if those things are coming up, which are common ones, we got some issues with our mental health that we probably need to work out and talk to someone about.
Yeah, and my question too is just how does or how can we deal with, you know, anxiety from a place of like going to like prayer, but
Mhm.
also like seeking help or
Yeah.
whatever the case may be, whether it's depression or, all these different things, all these issues that we come
Hmm.
to the altar,
Right.
that
Yeah.
we're struggling with this, we come to the altar, we're giving it to God. Um, so how does that kind of work in tandem? Because I feel like sometimes you get people in the camp of like, well, God heals, he can
Hmm.
take care of this, you don't need outside help. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like I think that there's just
Yeah.
it's rare to see both, and I guess is what I'm
Right.
trying to say.
Yeah, people think you've got to pick and choose.
Mhm.
I have to either pray or go to a therapist, but I think that you can have both. I think that God has given us spiritual tools, but He's also given us professionals to give
Yeah.
us mental health tools. So He knows, like, I know that this is my calling. This is literally why I was put here on earth. And so when I'm working with clients who, have a background as being a Christian or, faith, I include some of those things if that's something that they want. I include prayer and meditation, but then I also include boundaries and, healthy
Mhm.
communication. Um, and so I think that you can have both. It's not I don't think God sees it that way. I don't think He's saying, well, you can either pray and believe in me or you can put all your faith in a therapist. We can have both.
Yeah, that's good. I just wanted to take a moment to speak to that because I know that there are people
Yes.
who have been affected in either of those camps. And so I think like
Yeah.
it's really important to speak to that, like that you can have both
Right.
and that
Right.
it's
He's not going to be
needed.
disappointed. Yeah.
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 There's nothing shameful about seeking help.
Right.
And that's
Yeah.
really the heart of all of this, and is that I want people to understand that, and all the things that you've mentioned, like you have to name it to tame it. When
Yeah.
when your emotions are high, your logic is low. These are all just things that
Yes.
like we've got to grab a hold of and understand that
Right.
like it's okay to not be okay, but we don't have to stay there.
That's it. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we think that, well, if I am praying and I'm seeking the Lord and it's not getting better, either some people give up or I need to do more and more and more, then it becomes
Mm-hmm.
workspace and not faith. But yeah, we can definitely unpack and unravel things with a professional. That's the beauty of them is we're able, I always say I'm a mirror. So you're telling me things and I'm going to restate them or I'm going to tell them back to you is how I hear them. And we'll work together to untangle things and get things back to where they need to be. So that's really all that it is.
That's good. Now, do you think that if we're able to identify, things in our life that we're passionate about, can that have an impact on our mental health?
Yes, yeah. I think when we're finding things that we're passionate about, automatically we're going to be in a good mood. We're going to feel good. We're going to look forward to going to work every day. And so that's going to make us feel better. That's going to release dopamine, the feel good neurotransmitter. And that's going to a lot of times also be contagious. So, yeah, if I'm going somewhere that I love or I'm doing something that I love, I'm going to feel happy. I'm going to be in a good mood. That's going to boost my desire to want to do more, to want to help people, to want to serve people. It's going to help me to feel more worthy. And that purpose, that I talked about earlier of that's an unbelievable feeling when you're like, I have purpose. Like I'm here for a reason doing something that I love. That's going to help us if we're having a bad day or we are experiencing some burnout. We're going to look at it in a much different perspective because, well, this is what I'm supposed to do. So let me work on these areas so that I can continue to live out this passion or do this thing that I'm passionate about. Um, and then I think, again, it brings connection. That's one of
Yes.
the things that I love, like what we're doing, like
Yeah.
mental health, being able to connect and share with other people. And so that's why anytime people are like, hey, can you come and talk about mental health? Absolutely, because I want it to impact community and other people. So I think that there's so many benefits of doing things that we're passionate about in those moments where maybe we are struggling with our mental health, having that anchor, having that thing that we thrive in or that we love can really help us navigate some of those issues.
Yeah, that's so good. And that's really honestly for me why I started this podcast is because I had gotten to a place like where I didn't want to get
Mhm.
out of bed. I
Yeah,
was lacking so much motivation and hope. And when I started to just pray and ask God, like, how do I get out of this? How do I get through this? And he just kept
right,
taking me back to what are you passionate about?
right.
And that
Mhm.
is my hope for this podcast is that as people are listening, maybe as they're struggling to identify things that they're passionate about in their life, they can start to find
Mhm.
things by hearing what other people are passionate about.
Right.
Because like you
Yeah,
said, it's
yeah.
contagious. Like when you start
Mhm.
talking about the things that you're passionate about, even people who are shy, they start coming out of their shell because they're
Yeah,
excited about, what
yep,
they're experiencing, and they're excited about what they're eating or watching or doing, and it just
yeah.
becomes contagious and other people want to join in. And so that was truly
Mhm.
like my heart and my goal for this podcast is that when people listen to this, that they'll find hope, that they can get
Yeah,
out of that pit that they're in and they can find something that they're passionate about because it is so important, because passion, it brings out our purpose.
right.
And
Ooh, I
I
like
think
that.
that's so good. Like I don't know,
Mhm.
this has been so awesome, but I was going to ask, like, what is some advice that you would give somebody who is just trying to figure out what they're passionate about? Like, where can they start?
Yeah. I would say, what they're drawn to. We're all drawn to something, whether we want to make it public or private, but there is that thing that we keep going back to, or we could talk for hours about. There's that thing that makes us smile. that we could spend all day and night with doing. That's something we're passionate about. Um, my nephew, he actually is really, really wanting to pursue basketball. He loves basketball. He thinks that he's supposed to do basketball. And so my husband and I were relating to him. We never see you pick up a basketball and go to the gym. My husband works at a school, so we're like, you don't ever like ask us to take you to the gym, but we do notice that you'll, put on YouTube a drawing tutorial. Like we do notice that. So maybe put more energy into doing art and drawing because that seems to come naturally. We're not having to tell you to do that. And so I think if there's just these things that you want to tell everybody about, that you just keep coming back to, that you find yourself daydreaming about, what if this, what if that, that more than likely is your passion.
That's good. That definitely puts to words, I think, some of the questions that I hear from people. Well, where do I even start? I don't even know what I
Hmm.
am passionate about. I think that
Yeah.
that definitely helps. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Lastly, I just wanted to ask for the people who are listening who might be looking for resources,
Yeah.
where can they find information just to help them to find a therapist, maybe some information about your practice, where they can follow along on social media, because I know that you always post really great tips and things like that.
Thanks. Yeah, if you are looking for a therapist, but you're like, I don't know where to start, and you have insurance, call your insurance. When we are become LPCs or social workers, whatever path they're going down, we actually have to get credentialed or contracted with insurance companies. And so you can call and say, hey, I'm in Arkansas. I'm looking for a therapist, and they will give you a list of therapists that accept your insurance because that sometimes is a question that's in your area. And sometimes they'll tell you a little bit of like what they specialize in. But that's number one. Just call your insurance and let them know what you're looking for, and they'll be able to guide you. Um, Another great resource is Psychology Today. That is a directory that most therapists in the world have. And it's wonderful because you can type in where you want the therapist, you can put in what you want them to look like, what areas you want them to focus on. And it's just pages and pages and pages of therapists. You see their picture and then their bio. It tells a little bit about them. And sometimes it'll have like a link to their practice or pictures of what their practice looks like, what insurances they take, their fees. So it's a really good a bio to have. I honestly, and I don't say this in an arrogant way, but a lot of clients will say, "I chose you because your picture, you just are smiling and you look so nice." So if you're wanting those things, that will stand out to you. But Psychology Today is great. I use that for referrals sometimes if someone's looking for someone and I just don't know. I'll go on there and type those things in. And if I kind of know the person, I can say, oh, I think this person will be good for you. And then lastly, just word of mouth, asking questions. Who do you recommend? Who works with this area and this specific issue? Um, a lot of my clients come from my cousin or friend or teacher or whatever said that we'd be good together. And so we like that too.
That's
As
awesome.
far as me, I have my practice. It's called Resilience Therapy, and so I've got a Facebook page that I will, yeah, share different things from other practices, but then also I like to include different mental health tips. I have a side of humor, so sometimes I put like funny reels and things up there as well. And then I have an Instagram page that is pretty much the same thing as well, just tips and videos and things that I share. And sometimes if I've got some cancellations, things will just be on my heart. And so I'll put those in my Instagram or Facebook story. And then my website just tells all about me. So whatever you're looking for, things that you want to work on, you can send me an email on there and it goes straight to my email. And usually within 2 days, I will have called you and set up some consultation call to see if I can help you with what you need or if there's someone I know that can help you.
That's good. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I'm going to include in the show notes some links to
Awesome.
all those
Yeah.
things. Yeah, so people can go ahead and they can look at that and they'll have that as a reference. But again, thank
Yeah.
you so much for coming
Thank you so much,
on.
Brittany. This was
You're
awesome. Awesome.
welcome.
I'm so excited for you and this podcast. I got to listen to some episodes and I was like, this is so amazing. I love it. Like I said, I've been using the word passion all this week. And so I'm really excited to see where you go and how many people not just this episode, but the other ones, how it helps people. So it's so good seeing you.
Thank you. It's good seeing you too. And I'm just excited for this episode and all the information that you shared with us and how it's going to connect with people. I think it's going to be really great. So thanks again.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of A Little Passionate. If this episode resonated with you, will you share it with a friend or family member? We don't have to do life alone. Remember, we're better together. And if you haven't yet, please subscribe to my podcast. It's getting good, y'all. You do not want to miss it.